What's up, guys? So, just a nice quick beginning. I have a lot of mesh to be reviewing for this video, so we're just going to get right into it. First is probably going to be my favorite out of the group so far, after quite a bit of testing, is NinjaLax's beta number 1 prototype 10 diamond mesh, and basically it's supposed to be performance mesh, not wax mesh. A lot like the String King mesh, where there's not supposed to be really any wax or a whole bunch of coating in it. And so far it really feels like that. I've done all sorts of tricks and whatnot with it, done fakes, face-offs with it a few times, pretty much gone through everything that you can go through for a mesh and what you want from it. And I gotta say, they just hit it spot on. If they can come up with a 20 mil version of this, or maybe even a softer version of this, String King is definitely going to have some major competition when it comes to regular performance mesh from Ninja. And that's pretty high praise in my opinion, because not a lot of people have nailed it very well, but Ninja has definitely done it. It's very soft, but it throws a lot like hard mesh, kind of like semi-hard after you break it in pretty well. It strings very easily. There's no real need to really wrench down on it to reach your next hole. Right now they only have it in white since it's in a beta testing right now. I'm very thankful to, I believe his name is Chris from NinjaLax, for sending me not one but 2 pieces of this. I'm probably just gonna wear this mesh out until I can't use it anymore, and then I'm just gonna replace it with the other piece that he sent me, or I might do a nice little giveaway of the second piece, but more on that on a later note. So there's really I have no complaints. I've completely soaked this, gone outside and kept throwing with it, dipped it again in the water after throwing with it, and went and thrown again, and nothing. There's no change in consistency, except for maybe because of the shooters. And they haven't, no one's really figured out how to stop shooters from acting weird in water. So besides the whole shooter thing, this mesh doesn't sag. I mean, it can make a nice bag if that's how you string it, but otherwise it doesn't bag out from the water. It's very, very consistent. So probably for the first time ever, I'm gonna have to give a mesh, this prototype mesh from NinjaLax, I'm gonna have to give it a 10 out of 10 right now, just right off the bat, a 10 out of 10. There's no, I so far, with quite a few days of just almost constant testing, I have to give the mesh 10 out of 10 for performance and consistency. I might do a secondary review later after I've had a lot more time with it, but I think I've given a decent amount of my time to messing with this mesh, and so far I have to give it a 10 out of 10. So NinjaLax prototype beta number 1 mesh, just a standard 10 diamond. I believe it's like a 15 mil. So there's that. Next is going to be another, well, it's going to be, I guess, a very, don't really know how to describe it, but a newer, younger mesh company for wax mesh, and they are called MountainMadeWaxMesh. It's from Instagram. Some guys from Instagram got a hold of me and they're like, can we send you a piece of mesh to test out? And they sent me this black to white fade 15 mil. And at the time when I got it, I didn't have any heads to really string up besides this AV8U. And I figured, what better way to test somebody's new mesh or relatively young mesh in one of the harder heads to get a decent pocket in. And I gotta say, I think I pulled off a pretty decent mid to low pocket for this AV8U. But so this mesh, I guess something happened in the dyeing process, and the dye didn't really dye true black. They said that they're gonna send me another piece to make up for it, just try and see if it's improved or not. But color wise, they could use a little improvement. Usually in my experience with dyeing heads or dyeing anything really, the more it's not how long you dip it, it's how many times you dip it. So instead of just dipping once and going in and out, in and out, in and out, making the fade, what you do is you go back again after it's dried a little bit and dip it again. Completely just go over it again, and it'll not only will it bring out the color more, but it will be seeped into the mesh and be more true to that color. So the black didn't really turn out, you can't really see in my lighting, but it's a little faded, and not in the good way where it fades to the white, but it's almost like a really dark gray because of the not so true blackness. Performance wise, it's a little hard. It's a little, yeah, it's a little stiff, and it's 15 mil, and 15 mil isn't really supposed to be soft, but so it's a little stiff. It holds the shape of for the pockets pretty well, if that's the type of thing that you want. The stringing isn't too hard. Don't really have to wrench down too much to stretch to the next hole if that's what you have to do. Waterproof, yeah, they did. I mean, it might be a little hard, but they did a very good job of infusing the whatever formula wax that they were using into the mesh. Did a very decent job of that. I haven't had any flakes or anything coming off of this stuff in the like 2 weeks that I've had it, and so I'd have to give them a definite kudos on that. But so overall, this mesh would probably be more of an attack or defenseman's mesh, depending on your playing style, obviously. But overall, I'd have to give this mesh, I'd have to give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, just because of color and the fact that it's just a little too hard for my liking, and it just feels a little rushed. Like they were trying to just make a product and kind of get it out there. But I'm gonna spend more time, like I am with the NinjaLax stuff. I'm gonna spend more time with it and see how it does for me. So there's that from MountainMadeWaxMesh. Next is going to be, I believe his name is Brendan, but it is Beaver Lacrosse Wax Mesh. Now he's pretty big on the lacrosse forums, or at least he was while the lacrosse forums were a lot bigger than they are nowadays. But so I wanted an all black just because I'd heard that it's decent in performance, but so since there was other people's opinions that it was decent on a performance, I wanted to see how he did with dyeing and how the wax would infuse with that. And I think it might have been a bad dip, and I talked to him about it and we discussed what was wrong with it, and he said that more than likely I did get a bad dip with the mesh. And no one's perfect. These things aren't mechanically made. These are pretty much any wax mesh you get nowadays is going to be hand dipped, and nobody's perfect. We're all human. Everybody makes a little bit of mistakes here and there. Even East Coast dyes, I've gotten a couple bad pieces from them every now and then, but he's gonna also I'm pretty sure his name is Brendan. I have so many people always messaging me, but I'm pretty sure he said that he's going to be sending me another piece to see if it's the same thing happens, because it wasn't the whole piece of mesh that this happened to. It was like a little bit here, a little bit there. Like maybe it had been sitting in the mesh or the formula just a little too long in that section, or they didn't get it all off from that part, something like that. But this is definitely more for the hard mesh type people. It's not very soft. Then again, it is. I believe it's NinjaLax raw mesh. So I believe it's 15 millimeter, and so far, because of the things that I just talked about with the dipping and whatnot, some of it flakes, but in the parts where they did do a good job, or that the wax actually did what it was supposed to in the mesh, that there's no flakage from that. It's only from the bad part of the dip or whatever is going on. The mesh is very consistent. It shoots very well. It passes very well. The hold is pretty decent. Besides the whole waxing issue, I'd have to give Beaver Lacrosse mesh, I'd have to give it a 7 out of 8, because or 7 or 8 out of 10, because the color is pretty true to black. I mean, if you use wax mesh, it's not going to be a true color that it's supposed to be. But so Beaver Lacrosse, 7 or 8 out of 10. It's definitely worth trying. It's a very interesting mesh to be sure, and it's not hard to string, so there's that too. So moving on, next is some mesh from ThunderStrings from Instagram. I'm pretty sure they have a website. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that, whew, excuse me, long day. But so this is ThunderStrings mesh, and it is a volt to green. You can't really see in the video, as I can see on the screen, that you can't really tell what I'm seeing of the green. I guess, again, with the whole what I was talking about, where you need to double dip or dip more to get the color to really come out. In this case, they should have done what East Coast Dyes and a couple other of the big guys do, is they go to a certain point, stop the dye, and then go back to make it true colored, and then they bring the second color in, dye just to where the colors start to meet, go back and keep the color consistent. Otherwise, what happens is, with this mesh, the volt color was dyed over the entire piece of mesh, and then they tried to dip the green, and I've already talked with them about how to fix that type of issue, and they agree that my method would probably work, and I'm pretty sure they're already using it. But so, besides that, this is actually a very decent piece of mesh. It throws very well. It strings up pretty easily. Then again, I don't really string up Rabels too often, and this is a BeaverLacrosse, but it strings up pretty well. It's a little baggy. It is NinjaLax, and that's usually what happens with NinjaLax raw mesh turned into wax mesh, is that it does sometimes, depending on the formulas, it does bag out naturally because of how you're stringing, and that NinjaLax mesh does naturally stretch just a little bit more. than Stringer Shack. And for some people that's a good thing, and in my opinion it's a somewhat good thing because I like a bag, as I'm pretty sure I've talked about in the past. But stringing consistency is pretty good. The hold's pretty decent too. It doesn't really feel super waxy, which is good. It's decently soft. It could probably be used as a face-off mesh if they can get their formula down and their colors down, and maybe do a 20 mil, or I don't know if they've messed with Stringer Shack mesh, but they should probably mess with Stringer Shack a little bit, see how they like how it feels with that. But all in all, I'd have to give them a solid 8. Once they work on the color, they might get a 9, maybe an 8.5 once they work on their colors. But all in all, ThunderStrings did a pretty decent job for another young company, or company, as a lot of people like to call themselves nowadays. But ThunderStrings did a pretty decent job with this stuff. Looking forward to seeing what other stuff you come up with. And last but not least is Blatant Mesh, which they recently sent me 2 pieces, white and pink, to string up and test out, and I decided to throw them in these twin clutch X's, just plain clutch X's, old school clutch X. And it's the same exact pocket except for the shooter setup. And I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with these 2 yet. I don't know if I really want to try and use them because I have this whole rack of head sticks behind me, so I don't really need these. So I might come up with something to do with these. But these are Blatant Mesh, or Blatant Lacrosse, or as they like to call their group of followers, the Blatant Empire. This mesh is probably one of the better wax meshes that I've received recently. It is, I believe, another NinjaLax raw mesh company that likes to use NinjaLax raw mesh. And it might look illegal, but it is actually very legal. A couple people have been like, oh, you need to stick check that. I would stick check that. Well, after testing and everything, I've stick checked it, barely changing anything besides the shooters. Once I've felt that I got the pocket right, and it didn't bag out much at all. Like I said earlier, NinjaLax is going to bag out just a tiny bit, and you're going to probably have to tighten up the bottom strings at some point. But this mesh is actually pretty good. I think it was a very good idea for them to send me plain white and a colored, because when you use a plain white mesh of a certain brand and then you get a color of the same exact 15 mil or 20 mil, whatever you were using, if you get a colored one, it's going to be slightly harder and act slightly different. I don't care who you are, that's what happens. If you put a dye into a fabric, it's going to make it act differently. It's going to make it perform differently. So plain white is a very easy, very somewhat soft, and very pliable mesh. So plain white blatant mesh is very, very consistent, very easy to string, feels great, has decent hold, pretty smooth release even without trying to do a smooth shooter setup. So blatant plain white definitely gets an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So white did a pretty decent job. Colored, on the other hand, gets an 8. It has all the same feel, pretty much all the same stuff as the white, but like I said, when you add color to mesh, it's going to get a little harder. So that makes the pocket act slightly different. So the difference between the white and this pink one is the fact that the pocket doesn't go as far up into the head, even though it's the same exact sidewall stringing. all the string is exactly the same except for the shooters, and the shooters don't really affect what I'm talking about. But so I actually like the colored mesh. The waxing ended up being pretty decent for both. There's a very, very minute amount of flakes from the white, but that was more around the ends of the mesh, which tends to happen with any wax mesh. But the color, there is literally nothing to speak of when it comes to flakes. The color is very vibrant. I don't know if you can really tell with the video, but the pink is just so clean. I'm very impressed by the color that Blatant Lacrosse uses. I can only hope that their other colors and other products are just as good as this. So overall, Blatant Mesh would probably have to get between an 8 and 9 out of 10. But that was just a real, as quick as I could make review without editing, because I don't really like to edit my videos. It feels more like I'm trying to be involved with you, talking with you. It almost feels like I'm having a conversation with someone else when I'm describing these messages, and that feels better to me. I don't really like editing, feeling like a fake, or I'm trying to appeal to people. I do this because I enjoy it. I don't do this for fame, fortune, or any of that stuff. I do these reviews, these small little tutorials, because I enjoy it, and I want my knowledge to be spread to you guys. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. If you feel that there's a mesh company out there that I don't know about, which I know about a lot of them, I haven't tested out everybody's, but I've tested out quite a few. If you feel there's somebody that I don't know about that I should, leave a comment or have them get in contact with me if you feel that they should have their stuff out there. I'll gladly test their stuff out. Once again, big shout out to NinjaLax for their prototype mesh. I really hope that they keep producing this stuff. This stuff is really amazing, and so are all these meshes. All these guys put in a lot of work for all their mesh, and I just can't thank them enough for sending me all this mesh to test out and whatnot. So thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Please leave questions. I will try my best to answer them. Like I said, I'm in school still. I'm doing a lot of stuff like in my personal life, so I got to deal with that too. So I'm trying to put out what I can when I can. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep laxing and be a friend to somebody that you probably wouldn't be a friend with normally, because I've just been seeing a lot of bullying around lately, and I was a victim of bullying myself. So don't be a bully, be a friend, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.